Welcome to our final video lecture looking at the civil rights era of the 1950s, 60s, and beyond. Today we're going to be looking at our last piece, which is the legacy of the civil rights movement. The song you heard playing at the beginning of this video was We Shall Overcome, which definitely is one of the main songs of the civil rights era as African Americans begin to really push for greater equality and rights in American society. Our textbook reading for this particular video lecture comes from The Civil Rights Movement Takes Shape, 870 to 874, and of course Rights for Other Americans, 882 to 885. Two big pieces that we're going to be focusing on today are what were the two major laws passed during the civil rights movement, and then what happened during Freedom Summer. The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s definitely began to see the chipping away of Jim Crow, segregation, and discrimination with two important pieces of legislation. The Civil Rights Act of 1965 that banned segregation in public places and also employment discrimination based upon race, gender, nationality, and religion. And of course, the Voting Rights Act was passed the following year in 1965 that took away the literacy tests and the poll taxes that were denying African Americans the right to vote in our democracy. So definitely those two pieces of legislation are very important legacies of the civil rights movement. We don't see as much anymore of signs of white only or black only. Those have slowly been removed over these years of struggle of enforcing of these laws of segregation and discrimination. We also see with the legacy of the civil rights movement something called Freedom Summer, which is getting African Americans the ability to vote in our democracy. Freedom Summer will take place in 1964, where a lot of college students, both white and black, will go to many of these southern states to try and get African Americans to vote. Now, this will be met with extreme violence. 3 civil rights workers will be killed in Mississippi by the KKK. And it's not without its trials and tribulations and struggles. But slowly we begin seeing African Americans being able to be empowered by having the vote, which is so important in our democracy, of being able to vote for the representation, to have people speak for you and speak for your behalf. And because of the ability to be able to vote, we see African Americans after the civil rights and during the civil rights movement and after the civil rights movement being elected to public office. And the map you see up here is, as of 2016, these are the current U.S. congressional districts that have African Americans represent them. These are areas that see a very large numbers of population of African Americans that live in those congressional districts. Congressman John Lewis is a very well-known congressman. He marched as a teenager with Dr. King in the 1960s. He's a very loud advocate for civil rights, still is an advocate for civil rights as a representative of the 5th District of Georgia, who speaks for not just his constituents, but also for others as well. And of course, in 2008, Barack Obama was elected the 44th President of the United States, the very first African American elected as President of the United States. Important other legacies of the civil rights movement is from some of the successes of the 1960s of the nonviolent protests that brought about civil rights laws and voting rights laws, inspires other groups that felt disenfranchised and not being able to fully participate in our society, begin to use what was learned as civil disobedience and nonviolence. And this inspires Native Americans, Americans with disabilities, women, gay Americans, and other groups to start to push for their equal rights as well and being equally protected. We started our survey this year with our founding documents, learning about the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. And in our Declaration of Independence, that line, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, has become our motto, our mission statement of what we believe as Americans, of equality and being treated fairly and having opportunities to be successful in our society. In our whole course of our class, this survey, from 1776 all the way now up until modern day, we've seen throughout the course of our study of that struggle for equality. And that struggle still continues, whether it's the ending of slavery with the 13th Amendment, the equal protection under the 14th Amendment, the voting, giving women the right to vote with the 19th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Americans with Disabilities Act. all of these laws that have been passed from both past and into our more immediate present has all been that continuation and that struggle for living up to our ideals of equality and fairness and justice so people can pursue what makes them happy. The struggle definitely continues. Civil rights is a process. It has not ended. It's still something that we are still grappling with as a society of what creates a fair and just society that is part of living in a democracy with a wide variety of opinions. And of course, now you, as the student, are part of that now living history, and you will help set that course. This will become your legacy, your generation, in terms of how civil rights and what America means. You will play a very important role in that. So thank you for listening to all of our video lectures throughout the course of the year. Again, these have been hopefully here to help you learn about some of the different topics that we've been learning about in U.S. history. Thank you for listening. I wish you nothing but the best in your future learnings about American history. A lot of great stuff out there. We've kind of just touched the surface on a lot of these issues. So find a book, find a video, read up on these topics, learn as much as you can. That's what empowers you to be that informed citizen that I know all of you can be. So thank you for listening, and have a great summer.